Apple, and that would be far too sensible.
It's
What
like
are
a
you trying to do,
sound.
Cool sound input. You couldn't possibly.
You wouldn't think sound for audio, would you? I mean,
Well,
talking really.
but audio sound, you'd think,
All right. We should be live on YouTube as well.
I'm actually as high as I can go, pretty much.
What, on your settings in the Mac control panel?
Yeah, and in Riverside.
Riverside.
And to be fair, this is gold. This stuff that people are listening to right now. Have you managed to sort it, Barry?
Well, this is as loud as I can get it, so.
Oh, really?
Mm.
Okay, but I can hear you fine.
Oh, I'm there. That better? Any better?
It's difficult to
Any
say.
better? Any better?
You sound clear. So
Well, that's what I can do.
and luckily you're doing the audio edit this afternoon. So
Yeah.
thanks for that, Barry.
Smash my volume up.
Alrighty. Yes, how are we? So John Honeyball says he is dangling well. Mike Dear says yo yo yo. My father said see you. I think that goodbye. Oh God.
I think he means he can see us.
Well, I thought it was a
But
bit
what do
early
I
to say
know?
goodbye, to be fair. I know it's not been great so far. But this is just the preamble, guys. It's going to be amazing. Trust me. Not that I miss Darian terribly when he goes away. And it's left to us amateurs to actually try and shambolically put the podcast together.
Oops. I'm there.
I don't know, Barry. We're all doing. Thank you very much, Retney. I think this is great. Not live on
Ninja
YouTube.
Nurse says we're not live on
You
YouTube.
sure? It says It says we're live on YouTube.
It's quite a lot of tappy keyboard.
We've got 7.
That's me.
con-
It's all right.
current viewers.
I'll stop before we go.
Oh, your volume's better now, Barry. I don't know what you've done.
I haven't done anything, John.
Oh, okay.
I'm just naturally
Okay,
sonorous.
we are on YouTube. Stop trying to panic us. Okay. All right. We can now relax. I think it is actually working, guys.
I was pretty chilled in the first place, to be honest.
Oh yeah.
For once.
Why are you chilled, Barry? Is everything just going so
No,
swimmingly in your
Yeah,
life?
yeah, because once you get to that sort of, what do you call it, like critical state of deadlines where everything's late, you can might as well just ride it out.
I've
Yeah.
got a project that's got to be finished for Monday lunchtime, and I've still got a whole chunk of it to do, but then that's why God invented weekends, isn't it?
Yes. Well, Barry's very good at not working weekends. He's the best of us, I think.
I
I
do
think
work
having
weekends
families
quite a bit.
is a big thing, you know?
I try not to work late nights because the work suffers more than anything else.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. This morning, someone apparently I said to someone at one point, and then she repeated back to me that you should kind of only work till you're 80% drained. So you shouldn't be going until you're 100% drained. And apparently, I omitted these words of wisdom. I think it may have been someone else.
I think I start the day 80% drained.
Yeah, I look forward to the day I can get to 80%.
Yeah, exactly. All these idiots.
Microsoft seems to have no microphone size. So are you saying, William Kirk, that my audio is coming through badly? Is that what you're saying?
That sounds fine here.
Ooh, someone's got electric noise now. Have you tweaked something, Tim?
Not me.
I'm not.
Can't
I can't hear anything actually, Barry.
I'm getting a real like beep, 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 beep noise. Oh, now it's gone. Yeah, Retty heard it as well. See,
Okay, it could be a mobile phone close to something with port EMC.
it's gone now. Keep your phones away.
Okay, and now my dad's saying we're out of sync. And other people are saying it all sounds good. Dad, are you watching on YouTube? Because it might just be worth refreshing. God, look at those smiling. That's huge. I've just seen Ian Knox.
Ian, you need to learn the art of window in there, my friend. Nobody wants us in that size.
No, That's bigger than we are in reality. Not centered on the cameras. Yeah, okay. Let me see if I can twist.
Sorry, I'm
this
at home
slightly.
with my laptop, so you're looking up my nose.
Worst pop art ever. Yeah, I'm with you, Mike. Oh, okay. Well, this is very exciting. I think we probably should just go ahead and do a podcast. All right, shall I wait until 1 o'clock to let any latecomers have a chance to join us? It can't
It's
be too
now
far
one,
away.
Tim.
Is it? Okay.
Yep.
Hello and welcome to the PC Pro podcast. It is the 30th of October 2025, the day before Halloween, and three monsters are with you today. We've got myself, Tim Danton, editor-in-chief of PC Pro, John Honeyball.
Afternoon.
You're not a monster at all, are you, John? You're very cuddly.
Grrr.
That was disturbing as John approached the camera going grrr. And the even cuddlier Barry Collins.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Actually, Barry, we're going to start with you because there's been something of a rip-off.
Yeah. So this is Grokpedia, Elon Musk's attempt to launch a rival to Wikipedia, as you've probably gathered by the title. But of course, being Elon Musk, it has a slant to its content. So if you go to the Grokpedia homepage right now, I think it said there's about 895,000 different articles on there currently. And obviously, Mr. Musk and his company haven't gone out and hired a whole fleet of volunteer editors like Wikipedia has over the last 30 years. Instead, it's used AI to go out and create all of these different articles. And when I say create, I mean largely go to Wikipedia, cut and paste them, and publish them on Grokpedia. Now, I'm not quite sure on the legality of that. I've been trying to look into that, but I have sort of run out of time this morning. But I think most Wikipedia content is issued under a Creative Commons license. So I think there's no real problem with that as such, other than when you go to a good many articles on Grokpedia, they are identical to the word as they are on Wikipedia, which sort of raises eyebrows. But there are obviously some articles where things are significantly different. So let's take, for example, just to pick a random example out of the air, the profile of Donald Trump on Grok and compare it to that of Wikipedia.
So you're going to start with nice, not at all controversial one, Barry. Excellent, thank you.
Well, no, I mean, I just plucked it out of the air randomly and look what came up. If you look at the introduction to Grok for Donald Trump, it makes no mention of the various civil and criminal cases against Trump over the years, unlike Wikipedia, which has them in the third or fourth paragraph. Where it does mention his legal battles later on, right down the page. On the hush money trial, for example, it says a jury convicted Trump on all counts on May the 30th, 2024, after a trial in a heavily democratic jurisdiction. There's lots of qualifiers for all of Trump's various court cases in the Grok profile. Back into the intro for Trump, it states that he beat Clinton in 2016 despite trailing in the national popular vote amid voter concerns over globalization, immigration, and establishment politics. And then, like Wikipedia, it produces the source for that particular information. And the source in this case is a site called 270towin.com, which is a site that basically tracks American elections. And then when you check down that page to see was that information accurate, that site lists the issues of the day in the following order: healthcare costs, economic inequality, terrorism, foreign policy, gun control, treatment of minorities, immigration policy, and the shift in media landscape. They were the so-called issues of the day, yet Grok has turned it into globalization, immigration, and establishment politics. So immigration is mentioned in there as the 9th priority, and globalization or establishment politics weren't mentioned explicitly at all. So there's clearly some kind of editorial process that's going on with these profiles. Let's pick another completely random example of an article from Grokpedia. Let's take Tommy Robinson, for example. Here
God,
is
Barry, what are you trying to do to me?
here is the introduction, Wikipedia's introduction to Tommy Robinson. Stephen Christopher Yaxley Lennon, born is better known as Tommy Robinson, is a British anti-Islam campaigner and one of the UK's most prominent far-right activists. Robinson has a history of criminal convictions. Here's Grox. Stephen Christopher Yaxley Lennon, born is better known by his pseudonym Tommy Robinson, is a British activist and citizen journalist primarily recognised for founding the English Defence League and advocating against Islamic extremism and organised child sexual exploitation networks in the United Kingdom. So, if you came across those two profiles on those different sites, you'd come out with two very different impressions of the man. And I could go on with lots of examples like this, but there are the vast majority of articles I've come across are almost factually and word for word similar to that of the Wikipedia page, except those certain ones, politically motivated ones, perhaps where suddenly Grok seems to change its opinion or edit the articles heavily.
Yes, or as Ian Nock put it on Discord, it's creating a copyright issue where it's capitalised the right. So it's taking all the copy and just moved it to the right. I suppose, though, if that's what it's creating a version of information of the world that aligns with people's views. I mean, exactly the same way that the Guardian does, that the New York Times does, that the Times does, that the Fox News does.
Yes and no. I mean, there's sort of factually. I don't think that factually it's accurate to say that Tommy Robinson's best known as a British activist and citizen journalist. I think Tommy Robinson might like to be known as that, but it's not what most people would know him as. And of course, there's been criticism that Wikipedia has its own political slant over the years as well, and to some extent that's true. But Wikipedia has lots of layers of editing, is very open about how its system works. We know almost nothing about how Grok works. There's no About Us page on Wikipedia. It basically says we're using AI to create this and tells you nothing more about the editing process. And I suspect that's because it's basically just cut and paste large chunks of it from Wikipedia and then edited a few articles that it doesn't like.
And also, there's no review option. There's no kind of this is not true. It just presents it as a black and white, literally in black and white.
Yes.
As a list of facts. John, have you had a chance to look at Grokopedia yet?
Yes, I had a quick look on the back of these news thing that's been happening over the last day or so. I don't know whether to be sad, angry, annoyed, or just sort of resigned to this, basically, because what we're seeing here, of course, is the wholesale lifting of existing content, retargeting it, processing it through your own food blender, sprinkling it with your own biases and seasoning, and then bake for 20 minutes, kind of thing. So are we surprised that some things are clearly, it would appear, being lifted strictly from Wikipedia and then effectively passed straight through untainted, and other things are being completely rewritten, and who knows what the settings are on the engine to say give us this particular slant or bias or view or position, and then generating stuff, essentially analysing the original content to say whether it fits with the position that Grokopedia wants to take. Now, you're quite right to say, how is this different to the Daily Mail or the Telegraph or the Guardian or the Spectator or anything else? They do exactly the same thing, just using humans to do it in a sense. But the difference, of course, is that if you go to the Guardian of a computer off the interwebs, and therefore it kind of ought to be right. We accept and relish and applaud bias, and if you want to call it bias, views, opinion, and consideration. Hell's bells, I do enough of it in PC Pro for the last 31 years. I'm putting my hand up here and saying that's how the world works in this space. But we sort of still, I think, have this view that the electronic world of doing this will be okay, and it won't, and it isn't. The problem is we don't know what's driving it, and we don't know what its biases and views and so forth are, and it's so new that we can't actually build up a view and say, it's taking a slanted view in this direction. The other one, which I think is really fascinating, of course, is just whole scale lifting of content, which is utterly rife behind anything to do with AI.
Yeah, it's the foundation of AI. John, though, can I just take a issue with one thing you said?
Oh, please do.
Which is that we do know where this is coming from, because in the same way that you build up a picture of a columnist's bias, you will be able to also almost instantly know the Grok's bias. It's out there, and then you can read.
No, I'm going to disagree with you here, and I'm going to disagree for one very simple reason. If I read an article by Alison Pearson, I know I've got a kind of a view of what she says, and in the context of the broader Telegraph, choose your columnist, choose your newspaper, you can actually identify it better and within the broader context. The problem here with AI generated content on the fly like this is it's just part of a big fog. And it's very easy to say, oh, well, this is just Elon Musk's bias being applied to Grok. I don't think it is as simplistic as that. I think there's a lot more going on here, and I suspect there's an awful lot more input, and I use the term tweaking badly, but setting of tone and colour by a lot more people behind something like Grok than just what Elon rants on a Thursday afternoon and then gets sort of baked into the models.
Yes, I agree about there is that opacity to it that you don't have with a human being, and we will never get any insight into how the algorithms are working in exactly the same way we don't have for X. So we don't know how those promotions work. We don't know how it works on Meta, on Facebook or Instagram. But that's not going to change, is it? I suppose all I'm trying to say is that if you are going to that fact service, then you are doing so with your eyes open, hopefully, that this is the angle from which it is coming.
I'm going to disagree with you again, Your Honour, very, very slightly, and I think it is an important point. As long as you call me
Your Honour all the time, it's fine.
Well, it's a sign of respect, dear heart. Now, if you go to Google and you search for something and you get a list of answers, and you can see that the first 4 of them are blatantly adverts because they say that they're adverts or paid content. You can apply some view to that, yeah? And similarly, you go to Facebook and its algorithms will stuff you up with stuff. So that doesn't apply to an AI engine, is my point.
Yeah. And I don't know. I think the question almost becomes, what's the point of it? Barry, I'm going to pass this over to you. What is the point of Grokopedia?
Well, it's clearly to express a different worldview. Musk has long ranted against Wikipedia and its so-called political bias, and he's trying to correct the balance as he sees it. But, I mean, is there any chance that this is going to become as omnipotent as Wikipedia is? And I doubt it. But we know he's a very rich, powerful man with a lot of influence and a social network to back it up from. So if, we start getting links from out of X to Grokopedia and it becomes a source of knowledge for that social network, this stuff starts to feed into the gene pool, if you like. Okay,
so you're saying that this will actually become part of the information sources on which everything else is based, and that's why it's been put out there.
Yeah, and he's trying to lend himself some authenticity and authority by publishing what's meant to be an encyclopedia, and I'm sure we'll see a lot of back and forth between this and X because it's all about controlling the narrative.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, it's all a bit odd because as someone said, earlier on the Discord chat, PC Pro. God, what's the link? PCPro.co.uk link Discord will take you here. And as someone said, and I'm just scrolling back, I can't quite see their name, I apologise. But what is a encyclopedia? And do we just need to move on from this idea of these things ending in pedia being correct?
But they never have been. That's the point. I've got a full leather-bound set, whatever it is, 28 volumes of of Encyclopedia Britannica from, I think, the 30s or the 40s. And some of the articles in there will make your head explode.
Yes.
But they were contemporaneous, if that's the right word, of the time and the views of the time. And I'm certainly not one to say we should be editing these things to give them a modern context. We should be respecting the position they took at the time and in the context in which they took it, which is one reason why I have a particularly bad reaction to things like old BBC comedies from the 50s and 60s and so forth being edited to make them compliant with today's views. I mean, frankly, get a grip and grow up and accept the context in which they were done back then, and watch it or don't watch it, but don't ask or expect it to be changed. I was going to use the word sanitized, but that's the wrong term. To be molded and edited and recast to fit the sensibilities of 2025.
Yeah. No, you make an excellent point, John, and I do completely agree with you. And the point about encyclopedias from the olden days, and Michael Deere has pointed out that his encyclopedia from 1985 is mostly rubbish if you look at it now, although he also does a humble brag that he won a school book prize to win it. Well done, Michael. Yeah, they are nonsense, and I remember the entry for Stalin in the mid 1950s Encyclopedia Britannica is very, very different than the one you'll find today. So yeah, we do have to recognise that these things change.
And if I could just put one final thought onto this, the difference, of course, here is that my 1950 Encyclopedia Britannica is very obviously 1950. It says it on it, or whatever year it is. And one thing that we are terribly bad at, having a discussion, I think, with Jeff on the channel a couple of days ago, was just how bad the knowledge bases of even companies like Microsoft and so forth is. We took Microsoft as an example. You try looking up a feature in Outlook, and it's a complete cesspit of mess of bad information that's not properly categorized, and you don't know for which version it was, or etc., etc. At least when we had point in time in hard copy, we could look at it and know when it was published. But these days, who knows?
Well, I can't solve that, John. I'm sorry. The only thing I was going to add, though, is just always with any of these things, Wikipedia, Encyclopedia Britannica, whatever it is, go back to source if you possibly can. If you actually want to be certain of something, then actually just try and get back to the source. All right, this is a delicate subject we're going to tackle next, John. But if you could progress with care and attention.
Yes, there's a report out that OpenAI is starting to publish information that they've gained internally by monitoring ChatGPT users. As you can imagine, the query that goes into ChatGPT is not just kind of processed and answer spat out. They're doing an awful lot of analysis of what the queries are and what the output is for tuning, for performance and all of those things, but also for content. And you could imagine why or how some people who are in a, let's put it in a bad way, might ask ChatGPT the sort of questions that you wouldn't ask your mate down in the pub around suicide prevention, self-harm, and all of that whole world of topics. And so they are publishing out statistics of what they call mental health emergencies, including mania, psychosis, or suicidal thoughts. And they have said that it's about 0.07% of ChatGPT users over a week exhibit signs of this as detected by the engine in ChatGPT. So basically, they're obviously looking at the contents of the question, or repetitive questions, I guess, or asking more detailed questions based upon an existing answer, on all those sorts of things. And they say
that represents hundreds of thousands of people.
Well, this is the problem. This is exactly the problem. It's one thing to, be depressed down the pub and say to your mate you're feeling, really not very happy. It's another thing to do this at the scale of a planet. So yes, 0.07% sounds almost trivial and we can forget about it. But when you're talking about 1 billion users or 2 billion users or something where we will be either today or in the future, this represents an enormous number of people. And the question is, what can they do about that? Because clearly they have some sort of moral responsibility, if not necessarily currently legal responsibility, to help process, warn the appropriate people, and so forth. And here, this gets into an extremely difficult space, because if you're not careful, this is currently sitting on the edges of what you might call thought crime. You're not allowed to ask this question in this way because it might, and I'm just using the mental health issue here as one example, but what about, how to make a bomb at home or something? I asked Perplexity a couple of days ago, how do I break into WPA2 encryption? It basically said, I'm sorry, I can't answer that. And this, you can get around it by saying, I'm authorized to do this, and sort of cheat the engine. But the whole sort of processing of this, and for want of a better word, and I hate to use it, it's the censorship and monitoring of these queries. You can clearly see an upside, you can clearly see a downside to this. And where society sits with this, I really don't know. Now, they've said that they are building up a whole bunch of advisors and experts around the world, because of course there's going to be a cultural aspect to this, as well as a linguistics aspect to this. How you ask something like this in German might be quite subtly different to how you would ask this in French or in Brazilian. They're trying to, they said they've got 170 psychiatrists, psychologists, primary care physicians over 60 countries. So they're trying hard to do this, but nevertheless, the reality is that that these chatbots and so forth are coming under increasing legal scrutiny, because there have been some very unpleasant outcomes where it's been claimed that someone was chatting to a chatbot, and I believe in this case, OpenAI, about suicidal thoughts, and actually succumbed to them. And the question is, were they egged on, driven on, helped by the AI engine to do this? And then what is the responsibility?
Yeah, and remember, these AIs have been trained, the large language models have been trained to give positive responses, to support people. So if people ask in a certain way, then the engine, up until now at least, will have been biased towards almost saying, yeah, I can help you, I can help you. Yeah. Which is why we've seen some problems, but it's also it's kind of almost inevitable, just because of the sheer scale of this. 800 million regular weekly users, according to this BBC story of ChatGPT, and that's just one of these engines. So it's little wonder that these things are creeping out into the real world.
And how do you get? It would be nice, of course, if like ChatGPT, OpenAI could say, yes, these are the roots and the rules and the bending of the question that we do to help, and these are the alarm bells that ring, and so on and so forth. I'm really wondering, because these people turn around and say, well, we don't actually know how this thing works. These days they've got so complicated that we don't actually truly understand the flow through the system. We just sort of, you ask the question, it goes munch, 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 and out comes some sort of an answer. Is it even possible for them to document and validate this stuff, or are they just going, chasing clouds? I don't know.
Well, Barry, what are your thoughts?
This is an immensely tricky topic. I think that, to be fair to OpenAI in particular, that they do take care of this, and I have definitely seen examples. I mean, I use it quite heavily because I'm writing guides about it at the moment, and there have been times where even on quite innocuous conversational threads, it will say, "Sorry, I can't go down. This is against my policy for various things." I think they've tightened up quite a bit. I also see, the the chat GPT groups on Reddit and stuff, and frequently you see people in there saying, almost treating it like a sort of counsellor, and saying that they found it helped them work through mental health issues in particular. Now, they obviously, you know, need to apply massive health warning into this. It's not a mental health professional, but in a time where access to those services is very limited for many people, I think some people do find it help to talk to the AI about their problems in perhaps a way they wouldn't even want to do with another human being. And it helps them sort of think through problems. And you see a lot of people say, look, you know, my head was a mess. I blurted this out to the AI and it helped me think this through in a sort of more rational way. So I think there are two sides to this. I think the other good thing that they're doing recently is the parental controls system, which has just been ticked on in the UK, where you can say that this is my child, and if they put anything concerning into the AI, you get an alert for that. I think that's a good thing. So I think Michael D just made the point that at least they're looking and they're trying to do something that the social networks weren't. And I think it's a much bigger problem in social media, where you can go specifically looking for self-harm or whatever. And, you know, there are certain safeguards coming on those sites now, but it's pretty easy to still find that stuff. I think you'd have a lot more trouble trying to find out how to self-harm or how to kill yourself using ChatGPT than you would perhaps social media or the wider web.
John,
just one thought spin here, relating back to what we were talking about a few months ago about digital ID. If you're going to be needing to have some sort of a digital ID in the future that is going to tie you to a Perplexity, to OpenAI, whatever account, because you have to prove yourself to be over 18 in order to use something like this, what's going to happen if flags are raised about the behavior or the questions being asked by somebody? Is there going to be some sort of, I hate to use the term, but Big Brother oversight come, you know, we've had issues here with, what was it called? Non-illegal hate crime thing, yeah? You know what I mean, about people posting things on Twitter which was not actually illegal, but then 5 police turn up on their front door. Right. Are we going to have a similar thing fed by chat engines or LLM engines feeding back? And where does that take us? That's a whole space that we don't really have any kind of control or understanding about at the moment.
Yeah, we remember. I think we always forget how early we are in this journey, because ChatGPT 3.5 only came out in November 2022, and here we are in 2025, 3 years later, basically, and we've had this amazing amount of investment, amazing amount of development, but it's very, very early on, and so we are still just we're at the foothills of this journey. So it'll be fascinating to see where we are in 10 years' time, if indeed any of us are still allowed to be left alive by our AI overlords. So yes, early times. And the only thing that struck me is that if you watch people, if you listen to people's conversations, sometimes if you overhear people's conversations in the pub, a lot of the time people just seem to be speaking in parallel with one another. One person says something and then the other person says something that's actually just what they wanted to say. It doesn't really relate to what the other person says, and so it goes on. And so, you know, maybe that effectively is like a lot of the conversations people are having with the AI, except that this time they're actually listening. Anyway, that's a bit of a random thought. Thank you, Tim.
That was profound. Well done.
It always amuses me when you pick up on it. I just find it funny. Anyway, moving on to the next story, which is with me, and it's about AI once more. My apologies. Come on, we can't get away from AI. It is everywhere, and here we're talking about this is a story on the Register. Where it's based on the Forrester's prediction. So Forrester is a research agency, and we can't access the full Forrester predictions for 2026 because I didn't want to stump up $729, I think it was, to pay for it. Just don't have that kind of cash. So instead, I'm reliant on what the Register had to say, and their big headline was that the predictions from Forrester is that the AI layoffs will backfire, and that currently about half of people are quietly rehired at lower pay. So this is the attempts by many companies to transform themselves digitally by laying off human workers and replacing them with AI workers by effectively changing the way they do their work. So Forrester's analysis found that 55% of employers regret laying off workers because of AI, and more people in charge of AI investment expect it to increase headcount by that's 50% of people, and to decrease it over the next year, so that the trends we've been seeing could all be turning it around. And one of the issues that people are finding is that AI, weirdly, does not have the same amount of empathy that humans do. So one of the roles that's under threat by AI, for example, is in human resources. And you will see a lot of tools talking about how AI can help HR teams. But what they've found is that it doesn't actually always deliver what they expect. Here is a quote. Many will turn to vendors' AI-washed product offerings to give them at least the appearance of AI readiness, with only a few armed with the ability to discern legitimate tech from vaporware. So this is the issue people are finding with they buy something, they expect it to deliver miracles, and it does not. Now, John, is any of this a surprise to you?
Not really. I think we've just got to plod through this and see where we can get to it. You can argue it's a mess and it's not going to get better. I think we are in such early days here, and the legislative framework for this is so out of kilter, because if for one reason that this space is moving so quickly. I mean, we had the whole questions about early days of the web, but that was moving like snail's pace compared to what we're seeing here. And what is valid this week compared to what's valid next week from one particular search engine is completely up in the air.
Barry?
Well, I think I can't remember who said it. Go back to the quote that I don't think AI is going to take your job. It's the person using AI who will. And I think that if you use it as a tool to enhance what you do, I can see, in my own daily work, I use AI tools all the time now that for the jobs that would have taken me hours to do before, that they can now do in minutes. So, for example, we routinely have to look through long reports for, if Ofcom produces like a report on the state of the broadband nation, for example, and I want to find something specific. Previously, I'd have had to like Control F and try and find it, or look through 100 pages of documents to try and find the right section. That would take time. Now I can just bung it into an AI and say, show me the stats on, bandwidth growth over the past 5 years or whatever. It's much easier in terms of transcribing interviews. Something like Otter does that in a fraction of the time they would have taken us previously. So there are definitely productivity improvements to be had by using AI in specific ways. The idea that AI is going to replace you wholesale, I don't think is likely in the vast majority of jobs. But I think what I really dislike is the people who go, AI is rubbish, put fingers in your ears, write the whole thing off. There are obviously bits of it that are nonsense. There are bits of it that are very good, and we've got to work out which the bits that are actually productive and which aren't.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you, Barry. I think there's any cynicism about AI. And obviously, you're right. There are bits of AI that are rubbish, and in 5 years' time, we will all agree what those bits are. But right now, we are in a huge amount of noise around AI, and some of it will emerge to be signal, to use the cliche, but an awful lot of it will just fall to the back or be reinvented and actually become good. Because that's where we are. But one thing we can say with absolute certainty is that every single big company, every single big company is using AI in terms of their products and placing it into their products, but they are also using it to enhance themselves and to shed a load of people. And we've seen that Amazon this week, 14,000 corporate jobs went from Amazon. These are desk jobs, basically. So rather than the people. But even the people at the delivery drivers, they'll find themselves on this, because at the same week that Amazon announced announced this, they created those smart glasses. Did you see those smart glasses? But these are for delivery drivers. Actually, they look a lot like mine. They're quite chunky. They're quite unfashionable, and they have 6 to 8 hours of battery life. And the idea being that as a delivery driver, I can scan what I'm seeing. So maybe there's a QR code that it picks up all the information from. So when I stop the van, I know instantly what address I need to go to, what flat it is, any special instructions without looking it up on my phone. And they're saying, this could save, half an hour, I think, per week. They were saying it could save. And so over, once you scale that, that's, a few people who've lost their job, although, of course, Amazon will itself take over the world, but before the AI does. And so the only jobs are with Amazon. John, you had something to say?
Yeah, I mean, we get a lot of deliveries from Amazon, and so we get to know our local delivery people, even though a lot of the time they're coming out of Milton Keynes or Peterborough or all the way out to us. These people have got an absolutely brutal delivery schedule because they are being monitored in real time. Most of the time, it depends on which part of Amazon I've bought something from. I can look on my phone or my screen and I can see where the vehicle is, how many stops away they are, expected time. They are being monitored and data mined up the wazoo in real time now, and they are absolutely determining who will deliver what on which delivery schedule and so forth. To me, this is like the latest level of turning the screws on the delivery driver, because this means they can just pull up somewhere and their glasses will tell them where to go, rather than actually having to look something on a phone in front of them. And this is verging on brutal, surely.
And again, I mean, that example you just gave is the rough equivalent of Amazon drivers getting sat-nav 20 years ago, whatever. That you're always going to get these incremental improvements, and some of always the consequences of people go, "Oh my God, what's it going to do for jobs?" But that's going to happen, and I'm sort of. It's not the first time big tech companies have laid off tens of thousands of staff in one go. I'm sort of wondering if some of these more recent announcements, they're using AI to make it look like they're just becoming more productive rather than we're just laying off tens of thousands of staff and this is the convenient excuse of the week to
looking at how the Amazon, just taking Amazon as an example, how the Amazon delivery system works at the moment, at least possibly more out in the sticks here compared to, say, the centre of London, where traffic may be a different differentiating factor. I can see small incremental improvements, but certainly nothing like you say, Barry, about the arrival of GPS versus not GPS, and the driver themselves working out what route they're going to take versus this absolutely prescriptive, you go here, you drop this, you drop that. I think in some cases here, there's, and this is going to sound maybe overly cynical even for me, something like smart glasses for their delivery drivers is going to look very good as marketing of their tech and capability, rather than actually any significant improvement in the efficiency of the driver and the delivery process. So it's more a case of sort of corporate willy waving than it is actually making a difference. And I certainly don't see, you might save half an hour a week, I get the point, but half an hour of the week is not enough to fire some drivers. Yeah, I don't see that happening. If they get back to base a little bit quicker, then great. But what you know what will happen then, which is they'll find a way of stuffing more parcels into that remaining half an hour, and that's the slightly sort of hamster in wheel approach here.
Yep. Well, I suspect that we are going to come back to this many, many times. So let's leave it there for now and go for our final full story, which is with you, Barry, and guess what it's about.
Yeah, we have inadvertently stuffed it with AI this week.
No, I know. It's my fault, Barry, because I put this agenda together, so I take the full responsibility.
So this is a set of announcements from Adobe Max this week. Adobe really is going all in on the AI front at the moment. So Adobe Max is its sort of annual shindig where it announces what's coming in the various different Adobe apps and the wider Adobe business. And a lot of what it was focused on with this season's refresh is AI tools. But in particular, what Adobe seems to be doing at the moment is not relying exclusively on its own AI models, its own Firefly models in general. It's trying to become a sort of one-stop shop for different AI models. So it's now opened up to allow rivals such as Google Gemini, OpenAI's models, companies such as Eleven Labs and Topaz Labs into its various products. So, for example, now if you go to the Adobe Firefly website and ask it to generate an image, the first option, a primary option, is Adobe's own Firefly model, and they've just released version 5 of their own model this week, which it does seem to be a slight improvement on previous models. But you can also, from a drop-down menu, select Gemini or OpenAI or various other companies. So previously, I think it's fair to say that Adobe Firefly hasn't been the best at generating images up until now. And certainly in the past, I've gone to other services like Midjourney or whatever, generated an image and then dragged it back into Photoshop so I can edit it myself. It looks like Adobe's trying to stop that happening by allowing you to just generate that image from within Photoshop or Firefly, whatever, without you having to leave the app. Where this becomes slightly tricky is in terms of how they're charging for this. So if you're a Creative Cloud subscriber like I am, you pay your £50 a month or whatever, you get about 4,000 AI credits for free. And the majority image generation, particularly you do with Firefly's own models, they don't seem to charge for it. But if you use Google Gemini, for example, it's 10 credits. If you use OpenAI's models, it's 60 credits. So there's this real odd price differentiation between the different models, but without any clear, the difficulty for me is there's no clear understanding of the quality of what you're going to get or how these models really differ, unless you just do it through personal experience. And there's no clear justification why an OpenAI generation is 6 times the cost of a Google one. It certainly doesn't appear to be 6 times the quality. So I'm guessing it must be the price that Adobe had charged from the vendor, but that's all very opaque and not very clear to consumers to why I should take this. But the one standout of this deals with different partners this week is the deal with Topaz Labs, I think. And so Topaz Labs is a company that I've used quite a lot over the past couple of years. And what they really specialize in is upscaling images, AI upscaling. And it's really good. You can take a pretty low res AI generated image, put it into Topaz's software and say, make this a 4K image. And it's pretty damn good at upscaling with, full level of detail. Obviously it's interpolating and AI is guessing levels of detail, so for things like hair, for example, obviously there's not individual hair strands in a really low res image, but the AI interpolates those, so it's effectively creating a convincing hair effect that looks decent in images. They've brought that into Photoshop now. So one of the big criticisms of Firefly's models is they generate very low res stuff that if you were trying to use it in print, you'd really struggle. It would look blocky and broken up and low resolution. Now you can just go bung it through the Topaz generator, pay a few credits. Now you've got a 4K image that you can use when you like. So that's a real step up.
So in terms of your workflow, Barry, has it changed how you might do things, or would you still actually lean towards going to Midjourney because you're so familiar with it?
So the Nano Banana, which is Google's latest model, is very good at specific jobs, and they had that in the Photoshop beta for some time, and now they brought it into the full software. So if I needed an AI generation, a background or a texture in the background, I would definitely just use that as a drop-down menu now rather than nipping out to Google. The only thing that might put me off in the end is that for certainly on a free account in Google, you can get some stuff for free, whereas I'm now going to have to lose my credits in Photoshop to pay for it. So it depends where I am in the credit scale that month. But yes, generally I would rather use it in one app because it saves you all that back and forth and trying to get the different apps.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I just wonder whether, again, we are in that scenario where we're in the old. I'll use a very simple example of the days when we used to have a PDA and we had a phone, and but those people those proponents of that system and said, "I'll never change. I want the best of both worlds." You know what? It doesn't exist anymore because it's so convenient to just have it all in one device. Why not have two devices? And I think the battleground now, which is we're coming into, is who will be the big player in this in terms of the information based services that we use. But this is Adobe's big play.
Well, and I think it's quite smart from Adobe because I mean they already have quite a good lock on the creative industry, and they must have seen this as a threat and all these different AI models. So instead of religiously trying to make people use their own, they're saying, look, we'll open this up. You can use different models. I think that's quite clever. And I think what we're seeing right now in the AI industry in general, OpenAI are doing this. The announcement last month where you could have different apps that feed in. So if you want to create a Spotify playlist, for example, you just go now to the Spotify app, not available in the UK yet, don't try it. And it can generate a playlist that pops into Spotify. So these big AI companies are now trying to take the Apple model of becoming the platform, like the app store, if you like, of that particular brand of AI, and they're trying to take ownership. And eventually this industry will shake down, and there'll be one or two winners as there are in every industry. And I'd imagine Adobe and now OpenAI are very well placed to take that leadership.
Yeah, John, do you want to quickly round this
off? Yeah, quickie thing here. There's kind of a similarity here with these early days of cloud services. You could, if you're not careful, you can rack up enormously big bills. So gatekeeping around that in terms of access to models and tokens and stuff is going to be very important. It's one thing for it to stop working. It's another thing to have a corporate account and you've suddenly run up £1,000 worth of stuff just because you didn't notice. Of course, there's similarities here with children with tokens in games and so forth. It's such similar. One little, you're talking about local models and stuff. Just a little shout out to an app called Locally AI, available on iOS and iPad, so iPhones. And basically, it's a framework around Apple's framework for doing AI engines, and you can download a whole bunch of third-party AI engines directly onto your device, and they run locally on your device. There's no cloud access here at all, and there are good models here from well-known people. There's Apple's Foundation, SMO LM3, Gemma 3N, and so on and so forth. And it's a very rapidly evolving space here, of course. But there's some models there that are very good at doing image stuff. There's other models that are very good at doing textual-based stuff. Interesting thing, though, is it exposes it all out through Apple's Action stuff. So you can build these into scripted workflows, which is kind of really interesting, kind of local processing stuff, but choose your model, and it's all free. Anyway, just Locally AI is the name of the app, and it's free.
Okay, all right, thank you. Let's launch into the nib. So I'm going to start off with a new supercomputer, which won't actually be with us until 2028, but that HP has announced what will almost certainly become the world's fastest supercomputer when it does land, which is the Discovery. So that's something to look forward to, especially if you work at the Oak Ridge National Laboratory, which is home of the US Department of Energy. So that will be coming online there. And we had exascale computing. Don't ask me to define that. Just imagine that it's very big. But I think this one will be at least double that, possibly even higher, due to the sheer density of the cores in all these supercomputers now. Anyway, that's coming online in 2028. John?
Yes. If you go to the website of the ACCC, which is the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, so a government department out in Australia, they're taking Microsoft to court over allegedly misleading millions of Australians over Microsoft 365 subscriptions. This goes back to that point we talked about earlier in the year, where your Office 365 home or family subscription renewal comes along and suddenly the price had jumped up 20 quid or 30 quid or so in the UK because they were bundling the AI capabilities. And the American ACCC is claiming that this was very opaque and difficult to understand, and there was actually no meaningful justification for Microsoft forcing this kind of price rise on people. It could be interesting to see how this one plays out.
It will indeed. And I have inadvertently already given away our third nib. So, but I hate people to feel shortchanged. So instead, I will just say that OpenAI AI has actually, it's all those claims that it would not be, never be for profit. They've all gone exactly like Google all those years ago, saying it would never be evil. That's well, I'm not saying Google is evil now, by the way. I'm just saying it's dropped the claim. Anyway, OpenAI has now completed its conversion to become a for-profit entity. So that's probably will be revealed in your fees if you're a ChatGPT subscriber. Okay, all right. Thank you to the hot hardware of the week, which is with you, Barry.
It is. It is this little device that I have in my hands here, which is a Raspberry Pi 500 Plus. Now,
it's a keyboard.
it is a keyboard, a keyboard with stuff in it.
Just to say, people who don't join us on Discord, you should do, and you would have been greeted by 3 all caps messages of keyboard with exclamation mark by Mike Dear, Cold Graskas, and Running Dak. Go on, Barry.
Yeah. So when I get my hands on the people at Raspberry Pi, I'm going to wring their neck, because in a forthcoming feature for PC Pro, we looked at the Raspberry Pi 500 and whether it could be used as a daily computer. And I spent a week basically trying to run my office and my work life from a 500. But I think on the Friday afternoon, they announced, or maybe it was the next week, that they were launching a successor to the 500 called the 500 Plus, which ameliorates many of the criticisms I made of the 500 in that feature. There's a box out of the 500 Plus in there as well, just for readers who want to still have interest in that feature. But
do you mind just not killing 4 pages in the magazine that's going to come out to people with landing with subscribers this week, in fact, and going on sale next Thursday?
I was just about to say, you can regard this podcast as something of an addendum to that feature, because I'm going to talk you through the things I found wrong with the 500 and how they're addressed with the 500 Plus. So, and if you read that,
so yet another reason not to buy the magazine is what you're saying to me.
But obviously, there's more details. My lucid prose in the magazine. Surely we want to pass that up. But John, quiet. So, what are the differences between the 500 and 500 Plus? So the big difference, or the most obvious difference, is the keyboard itself. So we've gone from a chiclet design to a mechanical keyboard, and it's got a pretty clicky. I'm trying to hold it near the microphone and make noises, but noise cancellation might bring that out. But it's a pretty clicky keyboard, but it is. Oh, something pinged in my head there. Oh, it's because someone's DMing me on Discord. Stop it, people. But it's a massive improvement on the keyboard that was on the 500. And one of the issues I had, and lots of other people have had looking online, is the spacebar on the 500 is pretty unreliable, and it's only got one little, what do they call it, sensor underneath the middle of the keyboard. So if you pressed at either end of the space switch, thank you, pressed at either end of the spacebar, you often didn't get a press at all. And so this obviously fixes that. You've got full mechanical switches. All of these keyboards are replaceable. You get all the keycaps are replaceable. Switches are replaceable. You get the tool in the box if you want to start pulling them off. And there's backlighting on there as well. It's not plugged in at the moment, so I can't show you that. But it's got the full RGB nonsense going on. So that's a plus. The other big plus here is the inclusion of an SSD, not SD cards, as what have previously been the modus operandi for storage on Raspberry Pi. This is the first time they've actually included a full-blown NVMe SSD in the thing, and it's I think it's a 256 gigabyte model. It is that comes pre-installed with the Raspberry Pi OS on it. So all you need to do when you first get one of these is plug in the cable. By the way, the power cable they supply for these things is it's called a 2-meter cable. If it's 2 meters, it really is a stretch from just beneath my desk to the top of my desk here. So you might want to reconsider the cable if you're buying one of these. But what was I saying? Yeah, as soon as you plug it in, it boots into Raspberry Pi. You create a password and username, and you're off. You know, it's a 10-minute, not even 10 minutes, 5-minute setup process. So everything you want is there, and you're ready to go with a working desktop. Performance with the SSD is night and day better than it is running off an SD card. And obviously there's a slight bump. Well, actually it's not a bump in the process. I think it's the same as it's the same Raspberry Pi 5 core, but the SSD performance and 16 gigabits of memory, sorry, instead of 8, also makes a big difference to day-to-day performance as a desktop. So I've been using it quite a bit this week, and the 500 is usable. Don't get me wrong. I was still quite impressed at how good that was as a device. Stop smirking, Tim. You make me off.
No, because I'm getting abuse on Discord as I normally am. But carry on, Barry.
Smirking at me. I was going to tell you off like a teacher in the back of the classroom. Danton, behave yourself. But yes, in terms of like responsiveness, for things like using Google Docs and whatever, there's always just a slight lag on a 500. Now that's pretty much gone. It feels like you're using a proper desktop computer when you're using one of these things. There's mini HDMI.
How's their browsing experience, Barry?
What
browsing?
Well,
in Google Drive, etc.
Yeah, I mean it's really snappy. It's not quite like the same as using my MacBook Pro on my desk here. There is a slight delay, but it's not. Right. It's not anything I'd worry about. I was quite happy to use it day to day. You've got the HDMI connections here, so I was running it onto my 34-inch ultra-wide monitor that I was hardware a few weeks ago. It's fine. It's really responsive. Can run the 4K graphics. Runs Netflix perfectly fine. So as a day-to-day usable desktop system, it's really good. The one slight issue, and I need to look into this a bit further with running on an SSD compared to SD cards which you're using previously, is that in that feature I changed from using the Raspberry Pi OS, which I'm not a massive fan of, to Ubuntu. All I had to do then was switch out the USB card and you could change the operating system. Obviously that's not so easy once you've got it installed like an SSD internally. I'm sure there are ways to dual boot into different operating systems, but that's obviously a bit more complicated than just changing a card over.
Presumably, surely you can just put there must be an SD card slot in there.
You can, but then you're running off the SD card, of course.
Yeah. But I'm still saying you can still have that feature. You'll just be slightly slower.
You can. There is an SD card slot. You can still boot from it if you want, but obviously you're going to take a performance hit if the operating system is not installed on the SSD compared to the SD card. But overall, it's a massive bump in performance.
Okay. Do you want to tell us how much it costs, or are you going to?
Yeah. So massive bump in performance comes with a sizable bump in price as well, and it's everything relative here. So this model I think is 192. I'm looking at the stock on Pi Moroni at the moment. 192 for this alone. Plus, of course, you've got to think about that doesn't come with a power cable. It doesn't come with the mini HDMI cable that you need to connect it to a screen. Doesn't come with a mouse if you need a mouse, although I suspect most PC Pro readers don't. So with all that thrown in, you're probably looking at just over 200 quid, 220 maybe for if you need the cables and etc.
But it does include the SSD, and it's obviously got the double the RAM compared to the Pi 500, which was close to the £100 mark, wasn't it?
Yeah, just about £100. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So that is your product for hot hardware of the week, the Raspberry Pi 500 Plus. John, any questions?
Well, I confess I bought the complete kit of the 500, the first version, because they were doing it with a custom design monitor and a mouse and all your bits as a kind of a one-shot thing. And I thought that was a really interesting proposition. So I bought it to see whether you could actually live with it, work with it, do stuff on it. Now, of course, there's a whole bunch of stuff that won't run on it if you want to try and run some big Windows modeling software, etc., etc. But within its context, I think it's the base 500. I thought was an utterly charming little thing, really useful for doing good stuff. And I was using it with the default OS. I hadn't moved off onto Ubuntu or anything like that. So I thought it was great, and the screen was good enough, and the mouse was good, and the keys were fine, and the performance was perfectly adequate for the kind of things you would want to use it for. And so, as I said, it was a 10 out of 10 from me. Okay, the price has gone up on the new version, but the performance has gone up, the keyboard's better, and all of these things that Barry's been talking about. So it goes for me, it kind of goes from a 10 out of 10 as a kit to an 11 out of 10. And I take your point, Barry, about using it with a big screen or somebody else's mouse or whatever. But actually, as an integrated thing, the screen is that they sell for something stupid like 70 quid or 80 quid, isn't it? The screen that comes with it seems perfectly sized and appropriate to the size and shape of the product itself. So it's hotter than hot as far as I'm concerned. Don't have any questions because I got the Gen 1. Am I tempted to upgrade the Gen 1 to the Gen 2? I might, just for the sheer fun of supporting a local company.
When did you last use the Pi 500, John?
About 4 days ago.
Did you?
It's actually in the guest bedroom here at the house.
Oh, is it? Okay, nice. And I should say the display that you're talking about is very much an optional extra. I think was it 16-inch? Is that right?
It's something like that. It's not super big, but size-wise, capability-wise, and certainly price-wise, it's a really good fit.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Okay, let's go for votes. So that's a hot from John. It's going to be a hot from me, Barry. I really like this, and as John says, it's great to support a British company. So what about yourself?
Yeah, I think Nick Gassman actually just asked a really good question. So, what's it for? If it's not used for hobby kit stuff now, is it just a replacement for Windows? And yes, I could see it easily being a desktop replacement for something like, I always use this example. My daughter's using homework, for example, just needs access to Google Docs or something. Perfectly serviceable for that. I can easily see this being used in like a kitchen scenario. Currently, I've got an iMac in the kitchen, but if that went bang, I'd happily place a monitor and this in the kitchen and just use it for streaming and music playing and that kind of stuff. Just those sort of low level everyday computing tasks that you don't need to spend sort of 300, 400, 500 quid on.
Especially if you're into something like the Google ecosystem for Google Docs and Google Mail and so forth, where you don't need a whole bunch of local processing and storage and so forth. For that, it really is an excellent terminal into that kind of world.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, it's a clear win in the studio, and let's have a look at the voting. And it's an even clearer win, if that's possible, in the votes, because we've got a 90% to 10% verdict there. So that's a very strong outing, Barry. Are you happy?
I think that's probably my best score ever. I'm off to check Lee's database.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening to this week's podcast. We will be back, I would say, in roughly a week. Until then, goodbye.
Bye.
Bye. Timmy, you're going to ping me the files for this, are you?
Yes, I now need to follow the instructions word for word so that we don't lose this whole recording. So bear with me as I read the instructions.
I don't know how Darren usually does this, but there's an option to download everybody's WAV files individually. That would be best for me if you can do that rather than the all-in-one.
I can do that for sure. Okay, when the podcast is over and everyone has said goodbye, you can stop the recording if you want. Well, I think we shall, because otherwise we'll be here forever.
You can stop the recording if you want. What kind of nonsense instructions are these?
But this will also immediately cut off anyone listening on Discord. Oh my God.
Oh, bye, Discord.
Okay, I have to say goodbye to our friends on Discord. Are you ready for this, people on Discord?
The shock.
Goodbye.